Welcome back to another episode of Season 2 of the Rule 34 podcast. I'm your host, Joe. I'm your host, Jack, joined by my fellow guests.
It's Mr. Solis, ready to talk with you, Jack, about the night that puts to 2 in stupendous Wrestlemania 38.
Yes, we are back. Obviously, yesterday we were discussing Wrestlemania Night 1. We're back tonight. Night 2. How did you enjoy the night overall?
I'll tell you, Jack, Sunday nights, when the work week is looming on the other side of a good night's sleep, I was a bit distracted this time round. I had the TV on. I saw a couple of matches in full, but there's a couple of times I'm going to count on you to do the play-by-play because, I just wasn't feeling it. How about you?
I as well was semi-distracted for some of these matches. There's one where I'm hoping our distractedness doesn't align because one of the matches I just couldn't hold it, for a 4-hour event and had to use it and ended up missing it.
We'll get to that one for sure.
Yeah, I ended up missing one of the matches, but well, I guess we'll see as we go along, what matches align. But I guess we'll start off with the first match of the night, the triple threat tag match for the Raw tag titles between Alpha Academy, the Street Profits, and my worst take aging day by day, the tag champs walking into Mania, RK Bro.
Oh, you mean that tag team, Jack, that you were certain was going to be broken up on January 1st of this year?
Man, my take about that was just... And no, it was before the year ended. And I was like, oh, they'll probably start feuding by the time we're walking into Mania. And here they are.
Because you're thinking that we're going to meet here today talking about Riddle versus Randy Orton. Yep, like milk. That's how that aged. Hey, guess what, Jack? Now that Randy Orton is walking into this WrestleMania as a tag champ, he's literally walked into WrestleMania as every possible champion that's like in the division. He's walked in as the heavyweight champ, Intercontinental, US, and now tag. Isn't that wild?
Man, it's so crazy to think, not only did I say accomplish all that, but he's been here for a while. Yeah.
And we'll talk about AJ and Omos a little bit later. But, we all were really confused by AJ's involvement with Omos in the tag division. They are former tag champs as well. And think about, the difference between AJ and Orton. AJ was really kind of, borrowed, right, to build up Omos.
Mm-hmm.
And Randy Orton is sort of in a similar position in the tag division, really kind of building up folk. But he's just having the time of his life.
Yeah, he's been having fun there, He essentially feels rejuvenated down there. And it's just been one big interesting tag team to see because much like AJ and Omos, everyone kind of thought RK Bro was put together just to break up.
WWE have a long history of tag teams put together just to break up.
Yeah. So, who knows what the end game is because, at the current moment, I really don't know how they approach a breakup with this team because, I don't know, like I was telling my dad, do they end up, whenever they lose the titles, go the cliche route of Orton turning on his partner as always, or do they, turn Riddle to heel, but I don't see a way to make him the heel, I feel like even if he were to be the one to turn on Randy with the whole thing of turning on Randy before he turned on him, I feel like no one would even boo him for that because they'd be like, well, he was just being smart and knowing what Randy was going to do beforehand.
Yeah, I hear ya. So going into this match, Jack, who do you have winning?
Well, it's weird because they ended up changing the titles a couple weeks before Mania on Raw. Because originally Alpha Academy had him, so I guess to even further show how bad my take aged, I myself thought they were retaining because I was like, their second reign with these titles just only started, and it doesn't seem like they're going to be taking them off it anytime soon.
Got you. Well, going in, I was hoping for Alpha Academy because they're so entertaining and they're such good wrestlers. And I don't know, Otis and Chad Gable. There's a lot to like about that presentation.
Yeah, I really like the basically the change in presentation both got, especially from like the start of that tag team when they were thrown together versus how they are now. It's like I really enjoy them as well, and as we saw through both teams or all three teams in this match, they got some pretty highlight spots. I kind of like the direction they're going with the Street Profits, where I don't know, it seemed like they were still kind of face, but they were showing more like serious tendencies because it's been a while since that team's held any tag title. So it kind of shows that urgency from them that they want to hold a tag title after so long.
Mm-hmm.
What else do you think of the match?
It was good. It was fast paced. There's a ton of great action because there are 6 very capable men in the ring. Yeah.
Yeah, I especially, just liked all the spots showcasing RK Bro, like the double DDTs, the double RKO.
Mm-hmm.
Riddle coming in with an RKO out of nowhere himself. And then
Otis and Chad Gable throwing people around.
Yeah, there was the dives to the outside from Montez and Gable both.
Yes,
real entertaining from all three teams. Kind of a good way to open up the night with like fast paced action.
Yeah, and compare it to the SmackDown tag team match from last night, and you got 50% more action.
Yeah, and then at the end, RK Bro wins. They go to celebrate, and then they bring in Gable Stevenson, and that's when Chad Gable interrupts him. Get 2, I guess you could say, Olympians facing off, and that's where they get, Gable Stevenson getting his early Mania moment against him, and celebrating with RK Bro and the Street Profits.
We recorded last night's when we recorded last night's episode, we talked about Gable Stevenson, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, good. I'm glad that was recorded. I haven't changed my mind at all about what was said last night. It was weird.
Yeah, very much. It really didn't feel like, especially in this segment, that he fit in all too well.
He's like, he was doing he was very much so like, so Chad Gable comes in, smacks that drink out of his hand, and he's being Chad Gable. Gable Stevenson now is, I don't know, it's funny because as a wrestler, you're supposed to play to the audience, but he's just being too smarmy. He's like, I guess I'm going to take my shirt off, and I'm going to hit I don't know, it could have felt a little more believable? Is it because it wasn't believable?
Probably.
Yeah. Like, you know what? Maybe it's because of how aware I was that this thing that I'm watching was heavily scripted. Like, they practiced that whole thing, right? Everybody knew where to stand. Look to the left, look to the right, take your shirt off,
Yeah.
Compare that to some of the more organic anarchy we're going to see later.
Yeah, I think, it probably does have to do a lot of, like, I mean, a part of me feels like they haven't prepared them for stuff like that to do it, like, naturally in a way.
Yeah.
And so it just comes off as super manufactured from them.
Super manufactured is an incredible way of describing Gable Stevenson.
But we wrap up that tag match, good way to open. And then we go to a match that I want to say was set up just like on the Go Home show. And that was Bobby Lashley making his return from injury to challenge Omos for Mania.
Yep. We got 6 days of build. I mean, it's not like they build consistently throughout the week. We got 1 day of build. Well, actually, we got it on one show. We got about 10 minutes of build, Jack.
Yeah. Excuse me. The main build was that Omos has been undefeated. So Lashley shows up to challenge him. I think the phrasing Lashley used is what is a giant to the Almighty.
Oh, I wish I heard that. That's an incredible line.
Yeah, and in the little package they show also, they showed Lashley was kind of the first guy, since the split between Omos and AJ. Lashley was like the first one to get him off his feet and stuff, and topple him. So like it's kind of like an old school build of a giant going against. I mean, you can't really call Bobby Lashley the David in this situation, despite Omos being 7 foot tall. Lashley himself is quite built, And going back to what we talked about yesterday, now recording the day after we know what happened on Raw, the past couple, or since that segment happened, we haven't seen Lashley come out with MVP by his side. So, I wouldn't say there was much foreshadowing to that in this match, but we saw how that turned out on Raw. But the actual match, you see, Lashley doing his best to try and topple Omos. There was a spot where he hit his head on the back of the turnbuckle, or like the LEDs, and then he was actually being able to suplex Omos. But I put it to my dad, it was interesting to see just how low Lashley had to get himself when doing those suplexes, that he can actually pull off the suplex.
That spot where Bobby Lashley hits the back of his head on the corner post, Corey Graves calls it out. They play a replay, slow it down because you can see it, right? He bounces off that thing. And I think it's only after Bobby Lashley is presumably okay that they were okay playing the replay. I think if he was worse for wear, they wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. The same thing kind of happened in night one where they, during the tag match, they didn't at all go back. Like, once the match finished and they did like their post-match replays, they completely like avoided showing Boogs' injury and kind of all the stuff from before.
Yeah, they show it after the fact, like later in the night when we get a medical update.
Yeah.
But generally, I get the sense that like we saw it with Madcap Moss. Remember, he got dropped on his head by Drew McIntyre.
Yeah.
It was only until we knew he was okay when we got look at this again, the slow motion in from 3 angles.
Yeah. And I gotta come back to that for something that happens later in the show where it's another case of that, but this time I'm like, even though we know the guy's good, please stop showing that injury.
But you're right. Lashley gets him up for a suplex. It's a pretty low suplex, but impressive nonetheless.
Yeah, and he ends up beating Omos, ending his undefeated streak. To kind of the surprise for most people, because a lot of people thought they were bringing Lashley back from injury, not only presuming that, he was fine and clear to come back, but, to have Omos beat him and kind of build his streak further. But as we saw on Monday, continuation of this, and Lashley wins at Mania, but when it comes to their confrontation on Raw, that's when MVP turns on Lashley to align himself with Omos.
And to your dad's chagrin, almost in the prime of his life, 7 feet tall. He looked so good in this match, but couldn't pull off the victory. You know who he needs? A dastardly fella in his corner with a cane. And I think that's really good. Omos is the kind of guy that definitely needs an MVP. And Lashley is definitely somebody who has maybe either moved on from needing an MVP or they want to build him up as a big old baby face.
Yeah, I've noticed that too, and I think we saw, especially during the Brock Lesnar match build, just how much Lashley improved on the mic to the point where he can at least hold himself better off than when he first came back, Where
I would have him regress. I'd say, hey, I know they're getting better, but what if we got worse and it was a throwback to 2003? You know what I mean? If he's like, hey, Omos, you're a bastard. And then, can you imagine the ironic pop?
Oh, man. And it's funny you bring up MVP having a cane because I think it was on Twitter. people were bringing up the whole fact that MVP wasn't by Lashley's side, and people were wondering where he was. And I think it was Big Swole that made the comment that she stole his cane, so that's why he wasn't showing up.
I mean, did you see the length of that WrestleMania entrance ramp? It's not like Stone Cold was just loaning out his ATV for anyone to use.
Oh, man, yeah, I couldn't imagine having to wait for MVP to walk down all that.
Goodness gracious. Well, Jack, I know the next match is one that you're super excited to talk about. We're going to have to contain ourselves that we don't spend 3 episodes in the whole night talking about Sami Zayn taking on Johnny Knoxville in an anything goes match.
But this, again, like you said, can't go on forever. I mean, yesterday was the exception because of the fact that, the Rhodes Rollins match was followed by Charlotte, something we didn't want to talk about. But, night 2, there's still a lot to get into. So, yeah. Again, it's a celebrity match. This was one that people kind of didn't have expectations for, The one expectation was once they heard anything goes, they knew that there was going to be shenanigans involved.
There was going to be anything, right? Yeah. This guy on YouTube was like, Sami Zayn should have just challenged him to a straight-up wrestling match. He would have won. He would have, handedly won.
Yeah, the moment he said anything goes, everyone knew.
And with that in mind, Kevin Owens should have also challenged Austin to a straight-up wrestling match, and he would have won. No leaving the ring. Bell to bell. We're going for a pinfall. He had him, but here we are. And can I say this, Jack? I'm grateful eternally that this match was not for the Intercontinental title, like we feared earlier in the year. Johnny Knoxville cost Sami Zayn the Intercontinental title, so this was just going to be for lulz.
Yeah, and I was pretty glad for that too, because the one thing I didn't want was, because kind of under the presumption that even if Sammy was still still holding the IC title, many people felt Knoxville winning this was a lock, because especially like I told my dad, Zayn kind of got his moment against him in the Rumble when he eliminated him. And though Knoxville helped Zayn get eliminated by distract, or he didn't even really help distract him. It was all Zayn getting at him, So it's like Knoxville had to get Sammy back, and this was kind of the way they were more than likely going to.
Yeah, again, think about it, Jack. Last night, Logan Paul won. Last year, Bad Bunny won. I feel like odds are in the favor of the celebrity guest.
Yeah, very much so. And so,
even though Pat McAfee versus Adam Cole, even though the 24/7 athlete should definitely beat the gray-haired old man who has incurred more injuries than Mick Foley himself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, man. But what do you think of the match?
It was so fun. I mean, there were spots where I'm laughing out loud, There were spots that, didn't work. And they just did so much, and they tried so much. And this is one of the first parts of the night, Jack, that, I think goes on longer than it should. But the crowd reacts to certain things in a big old way. And they even react to stupid things in a small but measurable way.
Yeah, I felt the same way too, where I felt like they could have cut some parts that just weren't working as well,
Yeah.
But, obviously there was just a ton of spots in this that, and it was funny. I saw someone say that, in the current era of WWE, this is the closest you're going to get to a death match from a WWE.
That's funny. Hey, so I watched GCW The World, the show that happened a month or so ago.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt Cardona fought Joey Janela in a big old schmoz fest, right? That had a bunch of run-ins and a bunch of weapons. This was a better version of that match.
This match definitely, man, it was, like you said, they kind of threw everything just to kind of see what would stick and what wouldn't. And though there were some parts that I felt could have been cut, there was just, the crazy fun spots of, the crowd's initial reaction to seeing a table with mouse traps being brought out.
Even Sami Zayn reaching under the ring and then pulling his hand back because one of them mouse traps went off. He's like, oh, so good.
Yeah. And then there's the different members of the Jackass crew getting involved. Obviously, the big point was the small guy Wee Man coming in and body slamming
Yeah.
Zayn, getting a huge reaction.
How huge those guys exploded for Wee Man. And we had just seen Chris Pontius pop up, Party Boy. And he got a man reaction. Like, if you need an analogy, Jack, Chris Pontius is the air horn. Wee Man is that giant hand that slaps Sami Zayn on his butt.
Yeah, the giant hand spot, like as my dad mentioned to you, just the camera work. WWE's camera work a lot of times gets criticized for being too erratic and changing so much, but the fact that you did not see that hand getting set up or even see it in view until the moment it comes to smack Zayn was real perfect.
Perfect.
And then there's the bowling ball that Knoxville uses on Zayn in the corner.
I feel like we've seen the bowling ball bit, it's rolled, but it's rolled softly, and it's caught softly, and you sell it, right? Knoxville doesn't know nothing about that. I'm sure he told Sami Zayn, hit me as hard as you can, I'm going to hit you as hard as you can. He threw that bar as hard as he could.
Yeah, and then of course, adding insult to injury, they set up that automatic leg machine to kick Zayn down low as well.
That was weird. I didn't get it. It's so weird, I didn't know how it was any better or stronger than just a foot, like a real person's foot.
Yeah, and then of course, Zayn takes that huge leap after getting pushed through that table with the mouse traps. And then finally, the big selling point is all the members come out and they have this giant mouse trap set up.
I laughed, Jack. It's so absurd. This man-sized mouse trap that they slide into the ring.
Yeah, and then the funniest part is when it doesn't work.
Right.
Knoxville himself essentially is so used to all this that he knew what to do to fix the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that mousetrap comes slamming down onto Zayn. 1, 2, 3. Knoxville wins.
Knoxville wins. One thing we glossed over but needs to be punctuated. Wee Man body slams Sami Zayn a la Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, WrestleMania 3.
Yeah,
and the crowd went absolutely bananas.
Yeah, that was such a fun moment, a fun match overall, and it's kind of though it kind of stalled at some points, it was a match that, low expectations, but was one of the most talked segments of the night.
And it was so gifable, there's so many parts of that match you can just upload 30 seconds of and rewatch over and over and over again.
Yeah, I saw, the hand part getting, a lot of talk. And of course, the wee bad body slam, can't talk enough about that. But great kind of, showcase for Zayn, especially because, kind of gets underrated due to not, being the work rate that, people know him for. But
right.
He's one of those guys that, I feel like he's one of the few people that could have made this work, as we saw through the build, where he even, though it was probably a fake phone, or it was a burner phone, he was willing to put out a number there and, film all those segments of him getting called by people. Yeah.
It takes a special character to want to see everything happen to him, right?
Yeah.
And, even in the match, he not punts, but he haluva kicks Wee Man right in the face. And the crowd is just upset to no end by it. And goodness gracious, you want to see all of these things happen to Sami Zayn.
Yeah, and just a great showcase, and glad that I'm glad it exceeded the expectations, even though they were quite low for some people. It was you knew things were gonna be crazy, and they more than definitely lived up to it with how much they just threw out there.
Agreed.
But so we move on to the women's fatal 4-way tag match for the tag titles.
Goodness gracious, there are quite a few participants in this.
Yeah, so we have Sasha and Naomi teaming up in a semi-team bad reunion, as they mentioned. The tag
It's true they did.
The tag champs Carmella and Zelina Vega, Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan teaming up, and Shayna Baszler and Natalya teaming up.
Mm-hmm. Jack, I ask again, going into this match, who did you think was going to win?
I thought Naomi and Sasha were going to win because I just thought, if there was going to be any year that they were going to finally give Sasha her Mania win, it was probably going to be here.
Interesting observation. I thought, just because of how random everything else was and felt, that actually they were going to let Carmella and Queen Zelina successfully retain. I think there's also some funny side story about Carmella and Corey Graves, who has now begun to openly discuss the fact that he's engaged to Carmella.
Yeah. I saw like a bit of that like through clips in the build, and then I get the reasoning behind the stipulation, but I think it's kind of confusing. It's like we've seen in triple tag matches that it's one participant from each team.
Yes.
And I know a fatal four-way that can make it a bit crowded if you did one from each team. But it is very confusing that with the whole anyone can tag anyone in type thing, and you're kind of having to watch out from all four corners.
No, it's true, but I like it. That there's two people in the ring at any given time. That means people can let themselves into the match if you're too close to their corner. That means heels can team up, or you might go, hey, you get a bunch of work done, I'm going to take a break at the corner, right? Like, it creates a lot more possibilities.
Yeah, and so with four teams in this, all the possibilities, what did you think of the match?
It was good. You're like, this is engaging, exciting, physical, and like you think, well, of course, there's 8 very high caliber performers here. How many are former like champs? 1, 2, 3, 4, like half of them, right? Or 5. Yeah, you're like, wow. There's a double tope suicida, right, in two parts of the outside of the ring.
Yeah. It scared me a bit because it looked like maybe one of them, I can't remember if it was Liv Morgan or Sasha, got caught a bit, but they were able to fully pull it off from all of them. And then I liked there was different points where different moves were getting countered. Like I think at one point Liv's finishing move got countered. And then, you got to see the different dynamics whenever certain different teams tagged in. There was different matchups each time.
Yep.
But in the end, Sasha and Naomi get the win the tag titles.
Yes, they do.
And Sasha gets her first Mania win.
She sure does. I also was impressed with I'm sure there was something that Queen Zelina did that was impressive. But like Carmella just coming out with her like super kicks. I love her super kicks. I think Carmella and Queen Zelina are always sort of shown as like, I don't know, people who get lucky or people who eke out a win. And they look formidable here. You're like, look at you. Yes.
Yeah.
Champions, you're trying to defend and keep your championship. Also, Rhea Ripley and Liv came out in matching black spandex. I'm like, goodness gracious, somebody approved this for a family audience. I'm just saying, Jack, it's getting a little hot under the collar. My word.
Yeah, I forgot who commentary mentioned. I know they mentioned Donnie Darko maybe as a potential.
Yeah, Donnie Darko dropped. They were trying to make sense of like, Liv looks a lot like Catwoman, versions of Catwoman we've seen. So they're trying to figure out what Rhea is, and she's got kind of like rabbit ears. And one of them goes, "It's Batman." And he goes, "Batman don't have ears that long." And yeah,
that was a funny spot in that too.
Definitely.
But great, good showcase of the women.
Yeah.
I still kind of wish instead of the tag titles, we got like a mid card version of the women's titles,
like a TBS title.
Yeah, something similar to that. But then again, it's like you already have the 2 women's main titles.
Yeah.
So it would kind of be tough to have a mid card.
Oh gosh, that and Jack's hot take: the SmackDown Women's title is a mid card title.
Well, at this point, might as well consider it one.
Goodness gracious.
But we move on to a match that got cut from night 1 and was moved on to night 2.
That's right.
The New Day, Xavier Woods and Kofi facing off against Sheamus and Ridge Holland. This is their way to get each team on Mania and make up for the fact that their match got cut due to time restraints the day before.
Jack, a wrestling website or YouTube channel that I enjoy, have characterized they've characterized Butch, Ridge Holland, and Sheamus as Butch, Botch, and I can't say the third word.
I saw that as well. I think it was Xavier Woods that called him that.
Oh, I got you. So, I knew you'd enjoy that. I thought that was clever.
Yeah, very clever. And then going back to when we were talking about the injuries and, them only showing it once they know the people are okay.
Yeah.
They kept showing the Big E injury where he gets dropped on his head and breaks his
Goodness gracious.
And
gotta build heat.
Yeah, every time I see it, I'm just like, why? Why do you have to show this mistake that ended up leading to now we no longer have Big E on the card and would have been a 3-on-3 match?
Since it wasn't a 3-on-3, Butch, aka Pete, what's his name?
Pete Dunne.
Dunne, thank you. Is outside, and he's doing this funny bit where he keeps trying to interfere. Like, I don't know, he's like the cartoon animal that's smaller than the people he's trying to beat up, and his friends are holding him back, and he's like, let me at him. He's exactly that feeling.
Yeah, he keeps trying to get involved, and everyone's like, why is he even trying to get involved? Does he know they're going to get disqualified and all that? But,
and you think that's what's prompting Sheamus to keep holding him back. He's like, son, lad, you're going to ruin this match for us.
Yeah, and the funniest part is when you see him like grab him from the outside and just kind of carrying him away like he's a small child throwing a tantrum.
Sheamus is so much bigger.
And I mean, it was a short match, they didn't really get much time. But after the match, that's when Butch gets in and starts beating up both men, and this time they kind of don't really restrain him as much. They let him get his fix in, if you want to say. And the three men stand tall. Presumably either to continue the feud or who knows where they go from here with this.
I heard somebody say that if my name was changed to Butch, I'd be upset and want to beat people up too.
Yeah, especially with the whole fact that there's no real mention of the fact that he's formerly Pete Dunne. Especially the funniest part was when they did the change. Everyone was like, oh yes, Pat McAfee, the man who teamed with this man in NXT and War Games, doesn't know who this is.
Frustrating.
But, speaking of Pat McAfee, we move on to the next match, which is Pat McAfee versus Austin Theory.
Slow your roll there, Jack. I fear you've missed a match. A match not to be soon forgotten. I don't think you've covered AJ Styles versus Edge.
Oh, I forgot that. I don't have that on my notes. That was probably because of the fact that, I think I told you, I started taking less and less notes because I was more focused on it, but also kind of distracted. So I must have not even written down that match happening.
So it did. And this Jack was the match I watched the least. I actually saw highlights today. And I'll give you my insight on what I learned from the highlights that I watched today.
All right. I mean, first off, the part that confused people the most was AJ walking out with already a cut on him.
Yep.
People presumed it was from Pyro, but footage now shows he accidentally caught the stage while walking out.
So funny. And, unfortunate. But, I do that all the time. Like, I just walk too close to a door frame, Like, I don't know if I just misjudge it or I'm not paying attention, but imagine walking so close to something so sharp that it cuts your face.
And it was funny because of the way he looked. People were, already starting to presume that maybe, something happened backstage because of how, he kind of looked angry.
He looked upset, yeah. Like, yeah, somebody spitting his coffee or something.
Yeah, and then we have Edge coming out with his new dark persona. I think I described it to you yesterday as Edge Lord Edge.
Edge Lord Edge is incredible. His music starts, "You think you know me? Well, you don't."
And for a lot of people, it was the match they wanted to see, but I think you and I both were like, sure, why not? I mean, doesn't necessarily scream dream match to us.
No. During AJ Styles' TNA run, his New Japan run, nobody was thinking, I wonder what he'd be like against Edge.
Yeah. And so the match kind of happens. To some people, it felt kind of slow, but then, speeds up towards the finish. But I don't know. The finish was kind of awkward to me. Cause
yes, Jack, because guess what? I watched the replay, right? Because I know how it ends, but I wanted to know if I missed anything. And Jack, who appears on the ringside of this Edge versus AJ Styles match, completely uninvited?
Mr. Solis's Wrestler of the Year for the past couple of years, Damian Priest.
Damian Priest. Sometimes he's mean, sometimes he's good, sometimes he's bad. And I thought, gosh, I wonder if he did more than I saw because I was looking away. Because, Jack, AJ Styles goes for a phenomenal forearm. Edge spears him midair and beats him 1, 2, 3. I thought, did Damian hit him with something? Did he pull his leg or something? Jack, he stares. He doesn't even stare right. He's got his back to AJ.
Yeah, he's kind of looking at him like sideways, and it's just like...
weird. And that's enough to distract AJ. That's enough to imbue Edge with omniscious power of beating Styles clean. Stupid. This is stupid, Jack.
Yeah, and so him and Priest kind of just stand there and they raise their hands in celebration before walking off, and it's like,
think of Patrick from SpongeBob describing these two. They're just standing there menacingly.
Oh man! And so the two of them, I presume, are teaming up to start a faction, and I don't want to sound mean, but it sadly looks like Rhea Ripley's gonna get pulled into this group as well.
If Rhea and Liv go in tandem and they have like this strong women's tag team, that'd be something. And you know what? I'm not against Edge being a mouthpiece for Damian or Rhea. I don't ever want to see him in the ring again. You know why that match felt slow and plotting? Because he's slow and plotting. I watched Jack. So I told you I watched the highlights. All that made me think, Jack, was that AJ should have won. Like, none of those highlights were Edge. He's hitting 450s. He's hitting Pele kicks. He's at the Styles Clash. What did Edge hit? Edge cowers in the corner. Edge. Imagine this new, evil, twisted persona of Edge. How's that characterized in the ring? I put my knees up when he's trying to splash me.
Yeah, And, I get it because a lot of people think AJ needed to win, but, it's because Edge had this whole character change. He has to win, or else it...
And I wish I had the capacity to not focus on this, because I think 75,000 people were able to, maybe, kind of, sort of. But, Jack, who challenged who? Which of these men challenged the other?
I think it was initially AJ challenging.
Yeah, but Edge came out first saying, I want someone to step up to me, right? And then AJ did. And then Edge has got this, manifesto, right? He's like, but you weren't going to do anything if nobody else did anything. And you would have had a night off if you didn't go crying, I wish Edge had just attacked AJ. I wish it was like, I see something in you. You could be better than you are. And that would have made me more interested in this. But he's out there going, walk up to me. And then AJ is like, I walked up to you. And then Edge was like, well, now I'm mean and I'm scary and I'm going to kick you below the belt.
Yeah. Interesting to see where the faction goes, but yeah, I get some people probably enjoy this, but wasn't the best to me. And honestly, up until this point, it's like there's been some ups and or some highlights here and there, but it was kind of around this point that I was like, still night one over night two.
I am with you there. Night one over night two. Hey, did you hear about Brody King?
Oh yeah, I saw him posting that when they showed off Edge and Priest on Raw, he goes, "When you ordered a House of Black on Wish.com."
And did you see anybody's responses to him after that?
I did not.
They tore into him and they were like, "Bro, you can't even carry their luggage." You know what I mean? Like, hey, wait till you get something done in AEW before you start throwing barbs, right? And people start throwing ratings at that poor guy. Oof. Because, as bad as the House of Black and Purple are, more people are watching them. Ooh.
True. But I believe now is Pat McAfee versus Theory, correct?
Pat McAfee versus Austin Theory. How much time do we got, Jack?
3 minutes. So if you want, we can close off here and carry on into the next.
Close out here. We got 2 more matches to go. Pat McAfee living his boyhood dream against Austin Theory, and then the greatest match in WrestleMania history.
So we'll close out here. Thank you all for joining us in this episode. Tune into the next to hear about the rest of Night 2.